Welcome to the annual Water Drinking World Championships. Both players are taking turns to drink from their water bottle. It's a neck-and-neck race. Who will emerge victorious? Find out now. Hey everyone, we'll kick off our series of World's commentary videos, starting with the first round of the top 16 cut. This is against Timmy Wong. I am the 3rd seed, Timmy is the 14th seed. As such, I got to choose sides. I chose to co-op against his runner. Now, at the time of choosing sides, I didn't actually know of the formidable force that was the West Coast Whizzard deck, running Siphon and Obelus, and actually crushing a lot of the competition. I did not know at that time that 4 of the West Coast players, Wes, Alec, Brian, and Timmy, were on the same deck, and that they defeated a lot of opponents with it. So at this point, I was actually quite relaxed. I didn't actually know what I was actually facing against, or rather, I didn't know how scary my opponent's deck would be. I start off by double icing HQ with pop-up windows. Double pop-up window is actually a very terrifying server for the runner. Psychologically, it's not something you want to run through. It's a 4 credit swing to the corp every time you run through, and it is a very huge deterrent, which is quite important because I want to keep my boom in my hand. I don't want my opponent trashing it. So Timmy does run into my HQ after a couple of turns. This video starts a bit late, but basically I open with a solid turn 1 of Ice Ice Sweet Sweet. My opponent's set up with Orbelus, and I continue icing HQ with the second pop-up window. In retrospect, knowing that my opponent is on Siphon, I'm actually quite happy I have the double pop-up windows on HQ. It makes siphoning that much harder. As you can see in Timmy's opening hand, he doesn't actually have the account Siphon. He does have a paperclip in the bin, so that is something I'm keeping in mind. I will try not to rest resistors unless my opponent is tagged. It doesn't tax my opponent too much if I res resistors at this point. I don't really remember what the R&D ice is, but I suspect it's something taggy. Timmy plays a Rumor Mill and nullifies my Jackson Howard, going to trash it. And that's a pretty decent move. If not for the fact that I might have hard-hitting news in hand and am probably ready to kill his, flood him with tags. So at this point, I have a pretty good board state. My opponent doesn't have much in the way of breakers, or anything set up for that matter. Hasn't drawn too much, but I need to get going. This deck relies on threatening with the double agenda in the score area, and so far I have none. At this point, I did have a 2-1 agenda in hand, so I went with the plan and scored it. It is a breaking news, so that puts that agenda on the board, but more importantly, it also trashes the Rumor Mill. So Timmy not running my Jackson turned out to be a problem last turn, because now I'm actually able to use it if I want to. Well, I chose not to use it here. There wasn't much in archives that I needed to shuffle back in, just the Sweet Sweet. So I was content with him trashing the Jackson so that I can recycle it back later when I find my second copy of Jackson Howard. I don't really want to waste the Jackson here because I would like to reshuffle as many operations back into my deck as possible. So here, Timmy performs the account Siphon. He finally drew it. And, well, gets tags, and I do lose a bit of money. But that's not the biggest deal. As I mentioned in my deck description video, this deck doesn't really require too much money to operate. And now that my opponent is tagged, I can easily kill my opponent using Boom. Timmy didn't really draw up after performing his Siphon, so if I did have a Boom in my hand, that was going to be game over right there and then. Of course, not everything falls into place that easily, so I was forced to draw lots of cards on my next turn and then play the hedge fund that I drew. Still didn't draw into Boom, but that's fine. I'm still quickly drawing through my deck, so I'm able to boom Timmy next turn if he ends his turn on less than 7 cards. Now, he can, and he should, as a good player, end on 7 cards next turn, given that he has Obelus, which gives him +2 hand size with the 2 tags. So that would be a very wise thing for my opponent to do. Alternatively, he could clear tags to avoid the condition that triggers the boom. But let's see what he does here. So he pokes R&D. And I'm on 9 credits, I decide why not, I'm gonna res it. It's a turnpike, I believe. and that taxes Timmy and also slaps yet another tag on him. So landing multiple tags on my opponent is not the biggest deal. Knowing that he's on Siphon Spam, he's going to be tagged to hell and back anyways. It doesn't really matter the number of tags he has for the most part. What matters, however, is the fact that I'm taxing him for 1 credit every single time he runs through R&D, and that's quite a big deal because as you see here, he then steals my NAPD, which drops him down to 5 credits from 10 between stealing the NAPD and running through the turnpike. So it's actually quite important to tax that credit out. Every credit matters because because if I can bring him down to a very low credit range, he won't be able to steal the NAPD. Of course, I didn't know that NAPD was coming up right then. My only one in my deck is gone. Now, you might see the bar on the screen up there. This is the agenda tracking bar. This tracks every single agenda that is scored or stolen and what's left correspondingly in circulation. So right now there are 15 agenda points left in circulation, and right now 3 of them are inaccessible to my opponent because my opponent is tagged quite badly. So the QPMs, the kitties are safe. Timmy goes for the medium here and begins medium digging. With the porous ice on R&D, I'm not going to be able to defend against a quadruple R&D run next turn. So it only makes sense that I install the resistor that I just top deck off R&D that Timmy just saw on R&D. Another big reason for snapping lots of tags on the runner is that now that Timmy has gained 2 more tags from Turnpike, the resistor is going to do a lot of work. It immediately goes on R&D there, and it's going to be very expensive for my opponent to get through. And I also play an Observe and Destroy here. So getting rid of the Obellas means 2 things. Firstly, my opponent will have a very hard time cycling through his deck to draw cards to find solutions to my ice, especially my resistor. But more importantly, this reduces his hand size back down to 5, which puts him in boom range. So if I top deck a boom next turn, Timmy's dead. So that Observe and Destroy came at a very timely juncture, and it was a decision point right there. I could have gone for the Obellas, or I could have gone for the medium, which is arguably more threatening. But given the fact that I have a resistor on R&D, I felt very safe knowing that my opponent is probably not going to be able to run R&D very well. So sniping the Obellas was more important as it advanced my win condition of flatlining Timmy. So now I pass the turn over to Timmy, who then takes a couple of credits, installs files, and then attempts to run R&D, which makes sense given that his rig has just been destroyed and that the only thing he has left installed is a medium. It only makes sense for him to start pressuring me heavily on R&D. So I'm keeping in mind right here that one of my biggest priorities right now is to shore up R&D as much as possible. There are still quite a lot of agendas in circulation, so I need to make sure that Timmy doesn't get too far ahead on agenda points, because I could definitely still lose at this point even though I've taken 1 breaking news out of circulation. I have a couple of agendas in hand, and now I'm about to take yet another agenda out of circulation. You can see that it's breaking news at the front of my hand, and I'm about to score that. I have 6 credits, so yeah, I'm just gonna take this out of circulation. I'm kind of confident that Timmy will not run HQ for single accesses, given that it's double pop-up window on HQ, but better safe than sorry. The last thing I want is for him to have that breaking news. So I'm gonna score it right here. Also helps with the exchange of information plan. I need to have some 1 pointers to exchange if Timmy decides to go deep digging and finds all my big agendas. So, passing a turn over to Timmy, he bounced out of the resistor last turn, choosing not to break it, because that would cost him 2 cards with Faust. Remember that I've trashed his Obellas, so he's not actually getting passive draw from running. So he looks at his hand, there's a knife at the front of his hand. It only makes sense that he's going to play it right now and trash 2 cards from his hand. This will allow him unrestricted access to R&D for basically the rest of the game if I don't shore it up. So he's just going to consider which cards to use to break resistor with Faust. He breaks it with Spoon, and that's quite an important thing to note, because this means that my code gates are less vulnerable. Speaking of code gates, the very first card he hits is the Archangel. Very, very juicy. Okay, so first thing is first, I know that I get to install the Archangel next turn, and it's almost certainly going to R&D given how things have unfolded. I am going to trigger the Archangel here, bringing me down to 1 credit, and I bounce the medium here. This is a huge tempo hit for Timmy because now that he's on 0 credits, now that he's used up his account siphon, and yeah, now that he loses the what happens with the bounce is that not only does he have to reinstall the medium, which takes him an entire turn, he needs to click for 3 credits and then install the medium. That's 4 clicks wasted. He also has his viruses effectively purged because all the virus tokens that were on medium are now gone. So that's a huge win for me. On my turn, I show up R&D with the Archangel I just drew and take 2 credits. I know I cannot rest the R&D Archangel this turn, but it doesn't matter for me. Even though both of us know that that's an Archangel, I know for sure that he's not going to get any deep digs on R&D because he has to find a way to install the medium first, and then get past the Archangel that's outside the next turn, because next turn I'll be clicking for 3 credits. So Timmy here just draws for solutions right now. It's not in the best of positions. And knowing what he just saw on R&D, the first card was an Archangel, the second card he accessed was a Resistor. So those were literally the worst cards for him to see. He knows that R&D is going to be defended big time, and he needs some way to be able to deal with both the Resistor and the Archangel, in addition to having to install the medium. He discards the Fog here, which absolutely right. That's not going to do much this matchup. He's going to tag me anyway. So here I'm just going to click for credits and discard a card, going up to 5 credits. So this allows me to rest the Archangel on R&D. Now Timmy has some recursion. He has Same Old Thing and Deja Vu in hand. It only makes sense that if he wants to install the medium and start deep digging me, and possibly using knife, rather spoon, to get past the Archangel, he would want to use 1 piece of recursion on spoon, but that would cost a lot of money, in addition to installing the medium. So the first thing he needs to recur is not the spoon, but actually the account siphon. Account siphon allows him to swing the tempo to his favor, gaining a lot of credits while doing so, and making me lose credits, which means that it's harder for me to rest the Archangel, and now he has the credits to install both medium and potentially spoon my Archangel. At this juncture, I'd like to bring up a contentious issue, that is of takebacks. Now, Timmy wanted to play Deja Vu into account siphon here, but he realized that by doing so, he was not able to play the account siphon in the same turn because he didn't have enough credits to pay for the Deja Vu and get through the 2 pop-ups. So he asked for a takeback using a different recursion card, Same Old Thing, which I allowed. And I was watching on Twitch stream, and it was generally agreed that I was being far too generous considering the level of tournament that we are looking at. Personally, I feel that as much as this is a competition, we are all here to play a game and have fun with it. The last thing we want to do is to get knocked out and feel very salty about it because we made a very dumb, obvious mistake that we otherwise wouldn't, because perhaps due to the pressure of the environment. Netrunner is a very mentally taxing game, and oftentimes players experience cognitive overload, and that I fully understand as a player of the game myself. As such, I do what I can to ease the cognitive burden on my fellow players. If they make a really trivial mistake, like paying the play cost of a resource on their first turn, and then realizing that they don't have enough money to play the sure gamble that was in their opening hand, obviously I would allow a take back on that. And this is kind of a similar situation as well, given that no new information was revealed on my end and he didn't draw a card during that turn. So there's no reason not to allow a take back, really. After further discussion with some members of UK Slack, I realized that perhaps a better action on my part would be to call for a judge, because the moral responsibility of allowing a take back should not rest on the player, who himself is already cognitively burdened by the game. It should rest on the judge and the tournament rules. So that was probably a better line to take, but I didn't know better back then. Either way, I was satisfied with the way it played out, and we continue, with myself 5 credits down after the count siphon. So if you were following the video just now, what happened during my turn was that I clicked for credits and then installed over the turnpike on R&D. The utmost size is now a resistor. I overrode the turnpike because it did its job. It tagged Timmy to hell. And now that the NAPD is out of circulation, there was not really any reason for me to tax Timmy's credits. It doesn't matter whether he accesses R&D while rich or poor. He still has Whizzard recurring credits to trash Jackson Howard. So Given that my opponent's on Siphon Spam, I needed to conserve every single credit I could, which was why the Turnpike had to go, saving me 1 credit on the resistance stall. So now he attempts to run R&D, and I allow him to access. He does get through the resistor, and I chose not to rest the Archangel, mostly because I didn't have a choice. I only had 3 credits. Timmy has reinstalled his medium, so the pressure on R&D is back on and in full force. Passing the turn over to me, you can see that my hand is a bunch of combo cards and a Gutenberg, which is now more than useless. So my turn was pretty straightforward. Click for 3 credits, discard the Gutenberg. I am now just focusing on taking lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of credits because I knew the Siphon Spam was going to be real, and the double pop out on HQ could only do so much. Back to Timmy. He draws a card, finds a Hades Shard. So the interesting thing about this Obelisk Whizzard deck is that when you have Obelisk and Hades Shard and you make a run on either HQ or R&D, you can pop the Hades Shard to access all the cards in archives, and say there are X cards in archives. This triggers Obelisk at the end of your run, allowing you to draw that many cards from your deck due to Obelisk's effect. So that's a very powerful draw mechanism that is available to this Wizard deck at just 1 influence cost. The problem with Timmy right now is that with Obelisk in the bin, thanks to the earlier of Observe and Destroy, he is not able to fire off this combo, which is quite big because this means that he doesn't have the draw capability, and in turn this means that he cannot actually dig through his deck for solutions to the Ice and R&D, cannot dig through his deck for Siphons. Speaking of Siphon, he just siphoned me again. I was on 3 credits, he played Deja Vu for Siphon, I gained 2 credits from the pop-ups going up to 5 before losing them all. Now some of you must be looking at this and go like, hey, you call yourself a world's runner-up? You placed 2 pop-up windows on HQ and got owned by an account Siphon. You're just helping Timmy that much more. And usually that is the case. Putting pop-up on HQ against a Siphon deck is quite a bad idea because it generally generates more money out of your control because you cannot trigger whether to take the pop-up money or not, and converts them into Siphon money for your opponent. However, as I mentioned earlier, this deck doesn't really care about Timmy's credits. Whether he's on 2 credits or 200 credits, I couldn't care less. What's more important is that I actually have credits to play around with. I have credits to threaten Boom, I have credits to install and res ice, etc. So the double pop-up helps me do that. In this scenario, obviously, whether I was with or without the pop-ups, I would have been drained to 0 either way. However, having 2 pop-ups on HQ gives Timmy a lot of pressure because to maintain the Siphon locking me at 0 credits, he is forced to play a 1 account Siphon every single turn, which is unreasonable given that he has no draw engine. If he only siphons once every 2 turns, I would be able to click for credits across 2 turns, bringing me up to 6 credits. And if he pulls off a Siphon then, the pop-ups will bring me up to 8 credits, and the Siphon would not lock me down. I would be siphoned down to 3 credits. So assuming that my opponent is not able to siphon me every single turn, the double pop-up on HQ actually prevents me from going completely broke for the whole game, because they ensure that I have some credits to work with, even when I get siphoned. Speaking of going broke, we really should move on with the game. Timmy has now installed an Imp, Rebirth into Omar, and perform an Omar run on HQ, destroying my hedge fund. So I'm not able to play the hedge fund to go up to burst out account Siphon levels, but I was so happy. You had no idea. I was so relieved that the Imp hit the hedge fund instead of my combo pieces. I had cards like Exchange of Information and Archive Memories in my hand, and thankfully, so thankful that neither of those were hit because I needed those cards to win. So immediately after he was done with the Imp turn, I had to purge various counters. It was a kill 2 birds with 1 stone situation. Not only did I remove the Imp threat, more importantly, I was also able to reset the medium. So Timmy did manage to get a 15 minutes through the medium reset, but that was all fine. 15 minutes can easily be shuffled back into my deck, and it's not really a real agenda for my opponent. At this point, Timmy takes a sip of water, putting himself in the lead of the water drinking competition, while I'm left to mull over my draw. I spent the first click drawing because I needed to find ice to protect archives now that Timmy has rebirthed into Omar, but all I found was close accounts. After drawing the close accounts, I took 2 credits and passed the turn, and leaving all of you screaming at the screen, "Why don't you close his accounts? He had 13 credits, he's tagged, don't you know?" Well, relax. It doesn't really matter how many credits Timmy has, if you haven't realized by now. Sure, he can trace through the resistor and get lots of accesses, but for me, the most important thing is close accounts enables observe and destroy. So that's why I'm going at. I want to only play the close accounts when I can immediately follow it up with observe and destroy. Because right now, my main win condition is still the kill, which, by the way, if you haven't realized by now, after going through at what must be at least half my deck, I still haven't found either of my 2 booms. If I've drawn one by this point, he would be all but dead. So I'm giving him a lot of luxurious time to find his Flask Creed or another Obelisk to save his day. So if he does, on the off chance find it, I need to kill it with Observe and Destroy, and that can only happen with close accounts. So that's what I'm waiting for. In the meantime, Timmy runs my HQ, spooning my pop-up, and goes in for an access. Let's talk a bit about the rebirth into Oma, which I think is a mistake. Of course, Timmy did this without knowing exactly what my deck was capable of, but in retrospect, I think he will agree with me that rebirthing to Kim was a much wiser choice. He would be able to Kim, hammer down the close accounts right there. So, Edward Kim is the bane of this deck. You do not want your operations, which you have painstakingly saved up in your HQ for so long, trashed by that stupid ability. Oma is a lot less of a threat because your R&D protects itself between the Archangel. Now that it's on R&D, it's not very useful, but more importantly, the kitties that protect R&D, lowering the agenda density, and as you see here, letting the runner do the work for me. This little kitty wasn't in R&D, however, it was in Archives, and Timmy decided to run Archives normally instead of using Oma's ability, possibly thinking that I was stashing agendas in R&D sneakily and wanted to keep me honest. As you saw, he only helped advance my game by giving me my 3rd agenda point. Over to me, it's pretty apparent now that the kill is not coming anytime soon. I drew a card, it wasn't really what I wanted, and it's still not ice, so I'm not able to defend against Oma. So the only other thing I could do that was a defensive measure was to reshuffle the 15 minutes back into R&D, which is something that a lot of players, myself included, often forget to do. That's the one nifty thing about 15 minutes. The ability to just put it somewhere back in your deck means that now my opponent needs to find 3 agendas instead of 2 to win. That's quite a big deal. Alright, so everything's down there. The agendas that my opponent needs to steal, he needs to steal 3 agendas, and he cannot steal both breaking news and 15 minutes because that wouldn't be enough points to win. He needs to steal 2 global foods and one of either the final breaking news or the 15 minutes that I just shuffled back. So after taking 2 credits, I now have 9 credits, which is a very healthy amount. I can now rest the Archangel on R&D. Timmy runs through the resistor, and this is where I wish I closed his accounts because he is able to pay for the resistor. So these are the executive decisions you have to make. Do you use close accounts to defend against tracing through, or do you save it for an observe and destroy? Now you notice that the top card of R&D is close accounts, the second card is the Jackson that he decides whether to trash or not. If I drew the second close accounts on my next turn, I would then close his accounts because now I would have the extra close accounts to combo with observe and destroy. So yeah, it's sometimes worth waiting for the second close accounts. Now Timmy accesses 2 agendas on the runs. He does an R&D run through the resistor and then does an Oma run through R&D. And during his digs, he is able to trash Jackson Howard, steal a global food, and score me a quantum predictive model, putting me up on 4 points. And he's also on 4 points, but he has a global food and an NAPD in his score area. I have an archive memories and exchange of information in my hand, which I immediately play. 1, 2, 3, swap 2 agendas. I have global food and NAPD now in my score area. That puts me at 7 points for the game. I think this game demonstrates very clearly how well positioned my sync deck is to take out the menace that is the West Coast Siphon Whizzard deck. The way I played it, Timmy had very few outs. I was always making sure that no matter where he ran, he was going to be punished very heavily for it. If he ran HQ, I was going to get money to perform my shenanigans. If he ran Archives, I pitched a kitty there, he would help me score it, and that was what pushed me over the top, giving me my 7th winning agenda point. And R&D was kind of a lockout with Resistor and Archangel. To be fair to Timmy, again, this is a very bad matchup. Sure, he made some misplays. Most notably, I think he should have rebirthed into Edward Kim to stop me from winning instead of going for Omar for the perceived win, because realistically he was not going to get much of a win off R&D. Between Observe and Destroy and Virus Purges, he was not going to be able to access enough cards. I was keeping the virus counters on medium to no more than 3 or 4, thereby minimizing the probability of Timmy pulling out an unexpected win in the event that I had lots of global food initiatives stuck at the top of my deck. I think Timmy could have also used Deja Vu to recur Obelus at one point. Obelus not only would have saved him from the kill should I have drawn any of my booms, more importantly, it would have allowed him to draw the rest of his deck. You notice he spent a lot of clicks drawing this game, which was a huge liability and tempo hit for him. Obelus is very, very central to the Siphon Wiz deck, and not having it, you can see how slow Timmy was this game. On my side, I think I also could have played it a bit better. Most notably, I should have used the close accounts earlier. Of course, it's very hard to say, but giving him fewer runs on R&D is never a bad thing. I could have also possibly used the exchange of information earlier to swap the NAPD. I had the exchange archive memories combo very early on, and I nearly lost that combo when Timmy played the surprise imp on me, which was very good tech. I was caught off guard by it, and had it hit my archive memories or my exchange, we could be looking at a very different game and outcome. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it insightful. Happy net running. See you soon for the next commentary video.